Hey, it's Nick here from Grayscale Gorilla. And before we get started with today's podcast, I wanted to let you know about Grayscale Gorilla Plus. We just announced it last week, and we wanted you to know because we're going to launch it any moment now, and it's going to be for a special price only for those of you who reserve a seat. And you can do that over at grayscalegorilla.com/plus. Go learn about it over on the page and also reserve your seat so that when we launch, you'll be the first to know about it and the first group to join. Anyway, I hope you check it out, and on with the show. Well, hello out there, and welcome back to the Grayscale Gorilla podcast. It's good to see you. It's good to hear you in this case. Thanks for listening to the podcast as always. And today we have two additional guests here. Today we have Chad Ashley. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing fine this fine morning.
You're looking good.
Fine.
And of course, Michael Maher. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Are you caught up on sleep? Mike's got a newborn and has been in LA for a week. So how's sleep going for you these days?
I think I'm negative. I think I owe somebody sleep now.
Well, we just got back from SIGGRAPH out in LA. We're going to talk about Maxon and Cinema 4D R21 new pricing. Got a lot of questions about that, and we've been kind of discussing it behind the scenes. We figured we'd hop on, do a podcast about that. We also had some announcements at SIGGRAPH as well, including Grayscale Gorilla Plus. We'll talk about that in a bit, and just overall about SIGGRAPH and the show. So I'm pumped. Are you guys ready? This is it. We are here, and let's do the podcast.
Post SIGGRAPH.
I got my podcast voice on, and Chad's got the jingles. Let's go. Well, what's your overall thought about SIGGRAPH? I think it's our 10th year going. Been to multiple cities. Love going back there and seeing everybody. What's like the overall vibe you got from SIGGRAPH this year?
It's crazy small, comparatively to years past. I feel like it kind of saddens me a little bit because I've been going for a long time, since the late 90s, and it was a huge show. There was buses taking you to and from your hotel. There was just bumping into people shoulder to shoulder on the floor. And I think over the last 10 years I've seen it just completely shrink till now. I think it's a quarter of the space it used to take up. There's no need for buses to take you to and from the hotel. But I will say that there's an increasing amount of classes happening outside of the exhibit floor. Not even just classes, but showcases and just software stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, I haven't gone to a lot of the classes. I've always been at the booth and doing that stuff until this year. Of course, we'll get into that in a minute. But that seemed to be as busy. That seemed to be where everybody was hanging, was doing the classes, seeing the behind the scenes, looking at the white paper, presentations. And then, yeah, the booths themselves, that area was gone. And I was so small, and I couldn't figure it out if everybody was just busy, because we went out and talked to a lot of studios this year, and everybody's yeah, we're busy, we're slammed. And I couldn't figure out if it was that or if it was just SIGGRAPH in general, but it was definitely a lot quieter than other years.
Yeah, I feel one of the things that struck me was, talking to all the studios that we visited, how many of them didn't come out to SIGGRAPH because they're busy. And I'm okay, that makes sense, because if it's in a different city, let's say Vancouver or something, you can send your staff there, and that's what they're going to be doing all week. They're going to be there at the show checking stuff out. But when it's local to you, you basically are well, yeah, we'll find time to get over there. We'll find time. And then you get busy and you never go. So you end up I noticed that more people were coming to the after hours events than they were to the actual show.
And a lot of that was literally just people telling us about, oh yeah, we just got off of this job, and I can't tell you about what I'm working on, but I really could use a drink right now.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people looked like they were totally decompressing. Which is totally awesome.
Yeah, so it was and this will kind of lead us into the Maxon announcement and R21, but we looked at SIGGRAPH a little bit differently this year. Instead of being at the booth and talking to our customers there, we've done that for years and years. And Chad, it was one of Chad's really good ideas. Chad, you have good ideas.
I'm
so glad you're here. It's let's go talk to our customers and our friends and that all work here in LA. They all, watch our stuff, use our plugins and our assets, and let's go see like how let's make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing, which is trying to help people in their 3D everyday work. And it was so amazing to go see exactly that. Like not only friends of ours that have started studios and now have, teams of 5, 10, 15, 20 people, but even just like people we met at the show and learning about their team and seeing how everyday teams are using our stuff. And it was so great to hear from them. And it was great. I don't know if you guys like, what did you guys think about that process? Should we just do that again next year?
Hell yeah, dude. It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to like see how the people that are just in the grind and barely have time to come up for air, how do they work? What do they need? What do they like about what we're doing? What do they don't like about what we're doing? And really just get in there and like see where we can help. And also just know that somebody's out there like appreciating what we're doing and like putting it into movies. It's just like, for us, it rejuvenates me. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Mike?
Oh, I think it was so refreshing. And I think the coolest thing that we did was when we were setting up all these interviews and studio tours, we made it a point to hit studios in pretty drastically different worlds. Like we have people doing concert visuals, we have people doing feature length stuff for movies, we have YouTubers, like all these crazy different industries. And it was so cool to see how they use like our tools in different ways to help them get stuff done quickly. And it's really refreshing to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's super energetic.
Yeah, that was it was great. Like the Corridor digital stuff was amazing to me just because of I worked in like quote regular production stuff in Chicago, and seeing what you could do now with like a room full of toys and a production facility and a bunch of like people that are into visual effects and making all this stuff, and the stuff that they could pull off in this warehouse was amazing. It was like so interesting to see that side of things. I've always loved that kind of like run and gun, do it yourself filmmaking, and they've taken it to a crazy level. Like that was amazing to watch. It was really cool to meet them as well. But we can go talk about how great all of our customers are all day, how handsome they are. That's the separate podcast I'm working on. I think I could hear the audience right now going like, look, R21 came out and we want to hear what the heck you guys think, about R21, but also about all this new pricing. I'll start off by saying I knew that once they had the new CEO in at Maxon, that they would be making some big changes and that they were going to be doing a lot of interesting stuff. I am blown away by how fast all of this is happening. And I think it's really exciting for me to just see like how quickly Maxon and Cinema 4D are like making changes and I think going in a lot of good directions. So, with the Redshift acquisition, that was completely unknown by us, and I think ultimately a good idea. And then now with everything they're doing with this new licensing and the new pricing and all this stuff, I think it's really interesting. So where should we start? Where do we start with the R21 announcement? First of all, if you want a deeper dive, we have a blog post. Michael put together an amazing blog post at the site that dives into everything we're about to talk about in probably a lot more detail. But where do we get started? I would say that there's the actual R21 product that will be launching. We could talk about what's new. Then there's the new licensing / pricing, which is new. And then there's the whole Redshift is also a part of this licensing. So out of those three things, where do you want to jump in?
Oh, man. Let's start with the release itself, because I feel like it was largely overshadowed by the pricing anyway, and we could probably, there wasn't much to it, so we could probably cover that pretty fast.
Yeah, that's probably my most like exciting piece of it. So real quickly to break it down, there's new licensing, which we'll talk about in a second. The most important part is that the license follows along with you, kind of like how Adobe does it. So you can have, as far as I understand, you can have Cinema 4D at home and at your office and on your laptop, and you can log into any one of those. And as long as it's you could use it. I think that's pretty fun. I run into those situations all the time. I travel a lot. I use different machines. And that alone, I think, is really interesting. Ton of new interface changes. First of all, my most favorite thing for the interface change is that it's finally high DPI on my PC monitor.
Yeah, that's good. Thank God.
Does not look like a Super Nintendo game on my PC monitor anymore. It looks really good. And in fact, when you go back to old versions, so I've been playing in R21, and we could talk about that in a minute too. But when I go back to 20, I'm like, it just feels bad. Like it really does look good. I know it's a small update, but it looks really nice. But not only that, but not everything, but many things have moved in R21. So the interface has been somewhat almost the same, even since I started using it over 10 years ago, 12, 13 years ago now. And they really took a moment to say, is everything in its right place? And as we move forward, should we take a chance to kind of like reorganize the drawers, like some people have like a junk drawer, or some people have like, have always put the silverware next to the washing, the dishwasher. Sometimes you like got to rethink it. Like, and I think that's what they took for a moment and said, let's rethink where everything is. And they laid it out in a much more organized way. So that's exciting. So I'll try not to spend too much little detail on any of this, and jump in if you have something extra to say. But tons of new interface changes. And then we have the new MoGraph stuff. So the main one is what Michael said, which is the, I'm going to get this wrong. I say it wrong all the time. Force field. I want to call them force field, but I think they call them field forces.
I like force field better, dude.
On that.
Force fields is TM. So I'm going to mess that up, I'm sure, in future tutorials and videos, but they're called field forces. And
that's super confusing, that name.
Yeah, it's tough. But however, it was one of those things that I didn't quite understand. And I'm starting to understand more, especially after talking to some of the developers of that piece of technology at SIGGRAPH. So talked to some of the developers from Germany and really started to ask them, like, what's up with this thing? It looks powerful, but can you explain it to me? And I got some really good feedback about what it is. And it's really like controllable, like imagine taking everything in the like dynamics forces menu and building one set of it that you can art direct all of your particles. You could art direct your dynamics. You could art direct soft body. You could art direct cloth. And you can tell all these things that used to be hard to manage. And like you used to be able to drop them easily on a floor. But if you wanted them to do something specific, it was really hard to say, hey, go over here for a little bit and then over here and then move up and then scatter around. That was difficult in the past, and field forces helps you dial that in. And it's really hard to say on a podcast, but it's something we're looking into really heavily because it is a really interesting part of the new version. It's like, like we're all saying, it's not the most like super robust new version where there's like 8 sexy things to talk about, like there was in R20, but there's a lot of little details that we're going to see every day, like the new interface. And then these things like field forces, there's the new volume stuff, which we could talk about. There's the ability to cache your volumes, which I think is going to be hugely helpful. And then I'm sure, I don't want to put any words in Chad's mouth, but what do you think about the new bevels?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I think has been lacking in cinema like forever. Like when I first started using it, I was like, wait, this is like the motion design platform. There's no good way to bevel a logo or bevel some text other than a rounded or straight corner. Like there's no custom profiles. Like what is going on with this thing? And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And so now they actually are putting out this bevel, this new updated bevel tool that's going to have custom profiles built in. And it seems like a mundane, silly thing to be excited about, but as anybody who does motion design for a living knows, you are going to have to bevel some stuff in your career. You are going to have to bevel some logos. You're going to have to bevel some text, and it's probably not going to be enough to just do straight rounded edges. So this is a cool feature. I am excited about that. I'm also excited about the field forces. Almost did it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, overall, I think that yes, it's going to be hard to come out with any version of Cinema 4D after R20 that's not going to feel like sort of a not a letdown, but it's hard to maintain that pace because that was such a huge update.
Yeah.
Would I have liked to have seen some development in other areas, like in UVs, like a completely revamped UV situation? Yes, absolutely. I also think it would be rad if they've got this idea where you can sign in, and like you said, it follows you. Your license of Cinema 4D will follow you. You know, sign in at home, sign in at work. It would be amazing if, and maybe this is a situation, I don't know, I haven't played with it, that if I could sync my pref folder easily across if my pref folder and my lib4d files followed me the same way, that would be killer. Because that, my friends, is a huge pain in the ass.
I like that idea. Well, they have that new thing. They have the like my MoGraph or my Maxon. Yeah, so like maybe there's something that that they're doing there where
if you're listening, Maxon, that would be a killer feature.
It's like clouds. It's like my cloud save. It's like my Mario Nintendo Odyssey cloud save. You know, I could open it up somewhere else theoretically, right?
Yeah,
I could open it up somewhere else, and I can you know, be at the same star count. That's what matters, folks. Get your Nintendo cloud save.
Right. But imagine like that would be pretty rad, because think about how that would trickle down into scripts and maybe even plugins at some point too, where no matter where you log in, as long as you log in, you have access to everything you own. That would be fantastic.
Well, I think in general about the release, before we move on to the pricing and all that, the release, this has happened a lot with Cinema 4D and Maxon, where they have a big kind of like MoGraphy, sexy release. And then the next one is a little bit more inward facing. It's about kind of rebuilding the core, which they're doing, which is hard to talk about because what does that mean? But they've rebuilt the core to speed it up in a lot of places, which has always been an issue to get everything to multi-core. I know it's still not all multi-core, but they're working on the internals and the guts of the program to help with everything else that they're building. So it's one of those releases where it's a little bit more internal facing. You get new interface, you get new faster guts, you get and then the sexy stuff is like basically bevels, some nice fields stuff, additional fields. They actually relaid out the fields manager for those of you who haven't even tackled fields yet and looked at it and was like, this gets confusing fast. They took some measures to make that a little bit simpler. We're excited to show you that stuff. But yeah, it's one of those versions that if you are in 20 and you still haven't explored everything that's in 20 and you're looking at this new version, like, do I need it? Well, you know, you'll have to look and decide and look at this new pricing and see what it is. But if you haven't been updated in a few years, this is one of those times where you're like, okay, 20 was a killer. If you don't have that stuff and you get all the new stuff, it might be a good time. So maybe this is a good chance to move into the big drum roll, the big thing that Maxon talked about, dropped at SIGGRAPH, which is their new pricing. So got up on stage and basically said, look, 3D is expensive. And they're right. 10 years ago, this stuff was like $10,000. Chad's worked in this world to see the price fall from, I know one of Chad's talks, it was like 30 grand by the time you get the gear and the software, down to 10 grand in the early 2000s, down to a few $1,000s when Cinema 4D hit the market, to now, drum roll, What do we got with the new pricing? I know, Michael, you've been looking a lot into this.
Oh yeah, I've been. Let me pull up my notes because I don't want to get anything wrong. So just to preface this.
Get your
pressure.
spreadsheet.
No pressure, Mike.
We're specifically talking U.S. dollars. So if you're in Europe, there are plans for you guys there, but it gets a little wiry when you add VAT taxes and things like that. So we'll keep it simple. So if we're talking USD, a 1-year subscription to Cinema 4D will cost you $59.99 a month. So that comes out to $719.88, which honestly is like a couple bucks less than the MSA. So if you're already keeping your previous version of Cinema 4D up to date and your MSA and getting the newest releases, it's actually slightly cheaper than that.
By what, $2 you said?
It's like $4 or $5, yeah.
All right, so it's okay.
Yeah, so if you're just looking at getting R21, $59.99 a month. I think they're going to charge you all up front. I'm not positive about that.
Yeah,
I
you
asked
pay for
them
the
about
year.
that. Yeah, they said that. So first of all, that's for the year only pricing. So you have to commit for a year for that pricing. I think it's as high as $90 some if you do it literal month to month. And this is where I don't have the spreadsheet and I'll get in trouble. I don't know, but it's really high if you just want it month to month. But that price there, $59, is for a year commitment, and that's $59 a month, which is essentially the same as an MSA.
But I think the biggest thing was, and I think this is what got most people so excited, was they are introducing a Redshift bundle. And so essentially, if you want to get both Cinema 4D R21 and Redshift together, they're doing a bundle price. So that's also being offered as a subscription at $81.99 a month. So that comes out to $983.88 to get Cinema 4D and Redshift. But the catch there is this is only Redshift for Cinema 4D. You're not getting it for all the other DCCs. So if you're using Houdini or Maya or 3ds Max, you still need to go get the regular Redshift license. But if you're only using Cinema 4D, they do have this bundle now as another option.
Yeah,
Right.
and on the face of it, that seems like the biggest deal that this is, the people that this is the biggest deal for. What a weird sentence. The people that this is the biggest deal for are for people that haven't bought Cinema 4D yet, have been looking into it, and they've been looking at that 3,000 some odd number and saying that's way too much. Now they can actually start without that high upfront cost. So those of us that have had licenses for years and paying the MSA every year, this is going to look somewhat similar. It's basically removing the MSA and just paying for the month, or paying
Right.
for the year, and now you own it. So that to me, the biggest excitement that there is for all the people that looked at $3,500, whatever it is, and said, no way, I can never, lay the month, like put the down payment on it, so that now I can pay over the next few years. So that's where I think the pricing will make so much sense. Where it doesn't make sense, or where you're going to have to figure out if it makes sense, is where maybe you bought your first new version was R20 and you just paid $3,500 for that, and now you're looking at the new version and seeing if you want to be on it and all that stuff. Now correct me if I'm wrong too, Michael, there's still a perpetual version you could buy. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you really do like paying $3,000, you can still do that. There is a perpetual license. It's $3,495. That will get you R21 outright. So if you don't own Cinema at all and you want to buy it out, you can still do that. Now, it gets a little hairy when it comes to upgrades. It hasn't been very clear on how easy it will be to upgrade to a new perpetual license. Allegedly, there's something in the works, but there have been no fine details provided yet. So honestly, with this launch, they're really just leaning heavy on the subscription model.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's pretty obvious that that's kind of the funnel that they're hoping most people go into, is the monthly, or in this case, the yearly.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of places, Adobe was the first big one that went in this direction. but you know, the idea that you can get it for a lower price is, I think, really where this gets exciting. Like I said, you'll have to figure out if it makes sense depending on when you bought your full license and how long you've been doing MSAs. But I think for the person out there that's like, finally, I can afford this, that's where I think they're making it easier and more simple. And the other thing that we didn't mention is that the other way that they're making this more simple is they're getting rid of all of the versions. So before this announcement, there were like 4 flavors of Cinema 4D. There was like studio and broadcast, visualize, and another one. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there, and there was always this thing like, oh, I have this version. Can I follow along with this tutorial? And we've always took the stance of like, we built everything with studio version. We didn't always use all the studio stuff in this tutorial, but we just kind of assumed that you had it. And that was tough for some people that had a lower cost version, and it was just confusing. I think that was one of the best things that they announced, was like, no more confusion. There is a thing called Cinema 4D, and you either own it or you don't. And I'm excited for that, even just for tutorial reasons, not having to block people out of tutorials and training just because they have a different version of Cinema. So what they announced was, you get it all. You either have Cinema or you don't. And all the stuff that comes with Cinema, you get.
And you can buy it easily.
And you can go to a website.
Exactly. That was the other big thing, that there's no crazy more sexy features, but you can literally just go to maxon.net now.
Yeah. I mean, so that shouldn't be glossed over, because like that's we take that for granted on every other piece of software that we end up buying. And I agree, like all the versions of Cinema 4D were always super confusing to somebody that's relatively new to it, like myself. I'd always be like, wait, what are these things? Like, I don't understand why they need to exist. So those are gone. And I love the fact that you can actually just go to a website and buy it, like, because that's a huge pain in the ass for a lot of people out there trying to just like get it going, or maybe they need a couple extra seats.
What's also nice is they've announced, so R21 is slated for a September 3rd release. So that means, early September, you can literally go to maxon.net. And if you've never bought Cinema before, you can download the trial version. And what's nice about the new trial version is literally when it expires, you can subscribe and keep using that same version. You don't have to like uninstall it, then go download a new version of Cinema. It's all one piece of software now, which is actually really exciting.
I think it would be rad if like the demo expired and it just added like watermarks or something, and you could keep learning on it. I think that would be cool.
They just force you to use ProRender until you upgrade.
Snap.
Oh wait,
Shots
what?
Fired.
Wait, what? Yeah, I mean, there are other updates like to ProRender and stuff that I gotta say, like, shots fired. But we've been talking a lot to our customers and as well, and a lot of them are I'll say stuck, because I think you are like a lot of them are like, quote, stuck using physical and ProRender, and it's from what I'm understanding, it's not because they don't want to learn all these new renderers. It's because they can't get the word up through the right channel to tell their boss that this would save them literally hours of time to just get into a faster renderer.
Another challenge is so many of those studios are Mac based.
Right now, Redshift is not compatible. And and then something like Arnold. What's the pricing on Arnold these days?
Last time I checked, you could rent it. I don't remember the rental price, but to buy it, I think was like $500 last time I checked. But then they have a half price. Actually, I take that back. If you're a school, you can get it for free. But if you're a student, I don't know what the EDU price is. But if you're a student out there, get your school to get it, because it's free for schools.
Or you're waiting for that Mac Pro. Just hold on, because Redshift is coming. We don't have a date for Redshift on Metal for Macs yet. It's allegedly end of this year. I feel that's a little optimistic, but I wish them the best on hitting that deadline.
Yeah, I would love
very
that.
Optimistic.
I would love that too, but and they were still saying, obviously that's a big push for them. And for those of you who are still physical and ProRender, it's something that that is a little bit new to me too. Just understanding this idea that many of you are, because of where you work and because of either the budget that the team has or just the hardware that you've invested in or all the render nodes, like for many, many reasons, people are using Pro Render and physical render. And we're talking to more studios just like you and trying to figure out how to help exactly that. And so it's been something, and we may touch on this when it comes to Grayscale Gorilla Plus and all that stuff in a moment, but we are looking at how to speed that process up, but more importantly, like how to get the language out that these other renderers are they're not just like twice as fast. It's not like a little bit faster. It's like 10x once you get these new renderers working.
And they look better too.
Listen to how excited Nick is now that he could use Redshift.
Now that I can use
I know. Look who's come around.
I know. It's been big. And you know what? I want to do that. Maybe on a future podcast we should do, I'm going to make a live note that I'm going to do an update on my PC journey and how I feel about it, and the goods and the bads and all that. So I'm going to put that in our little notes. We probably won't have time today because we got so much other stuff to talk about with SIGGRAPH. But let's do that. That'd be a good idea. Little meta moment here at the Grayscale Gorilla podcast. Anything else as far as obviously having Redshift? Did you mention the Redshift price, by the way, Michael, the bundle?
Right. So the Cinema 4D Redshift bundle comes out to $81.99 a month. It's about $983 for the year. But the caveat is that only is Redshift for Cinema 4D. So if you're using Redshift in other apps like Houdini or Maya or anywhere else, it's going to make more sense for you to just get a Cinema 4D subscription by itself and keep your Redshift license separate.
Yeah, it's not quite. You got to really evaluate the deal here because it's really built. It's built and pointed at the new user. So really go in, look at our post, and see if it's which avenue might be right for you.
Right, and we'll update this. We'll release kind of a breakdown for everybody to follow along with on like what the final dollar amount comes out to for each of these different bundles and separate services.
We got you. We know it's confusing.
If we're confused,
it's confusing us.
So it's okay.
Yeah, I think that it's a good step in making it more simple, and they're just going through the transition of going from perpetual pricing to monthly or yearly is just it can be confusing, especially for people that purchased something in the last year. How are they going to handle that? And it sounds like they do have ways to do that. So don't forget to contact support, like ask them too, because I think that they have special ways, like, oh, I just bought it like 6 months ago. What are you going to do here? They've as far as I've dealt with them, they've always been very fair in making sure that they make all that make them happy. So I would definitely contact them as well. So
they were super open about that. For those of you who just maybe re-upped your MSA a week ago or a couple weeks ago, there are incentives for you to either get a discount in the future or you can kind of switch over and apply it towards a subscription. But they are working out deals for for all of you. So definitely reach out to Maxon. Reach out to Maxon, not us. Reach out to Maxon.
Yeah, made you say that, dude.
That's right.
Getting all kinds of calls.
Cool. So I'm just looking through the notes. Last thing I'll say is that there's new modeling tools that some people that model in Cinema 4D we're excited about. So I would check those out as well if you're a modeler.
And there's Mixamo stuff too. So if you're working on some character animation stuff using Adobe's Mixamo platform, that's about to make your life quite a bit easier now too.
Yeah, wow. I got to dig into that. So maybe that's a good transition to get into R21 and what I've been looking at and some of the things I've been learning in R21. That Mixamo thing reminds me, because we have those tutorials from a few years ago now that are still being watched a ton on YouTube, which is like the dancing Mixamo with hair, the dancing Mixamo person with spheres all over, like essentially how to take that data and bring it into Cinema and try to make it look good. And this may be an easier way to get that process going, which will be fun.
Yeah, I got a good demo from Steve Teeps For those of you that don't know, Steve Teeps is a fantastic concept artist, and he uses Mixamo a lot. And on the show floor, he was doing some of that, like bringing in a Mixamo character. And the problem, as he described it to me, was that if you brought in a Mixamo character and applied it to your model and you know do your thing, you can't layer animation on top of that. Like, let's say you wanted to have the character like turn their head as they're walking. You couldn't do that very easily. So this new workflow is going to allow much easier editing of your rig after you've brought it in with Mixamo. So
that was, I think, one of the main comments on our tutorial was like, okay, well, that was cool. They did the breakdance exactly the way you wanted. But now what if I want them to walk away afterwards? Or what if I want them to like morph between two sets of dance data or whatever? Like, well, that's where it gets a lot more tricky. It sounds like this rig starts to solve those things.
Yeah.
So that probably brings us to, you know, me playing with R21 and, you know, looking into it. So of course, you know, we got a new version and we want to make sure everyone is not only understands what's new, which is what we're doing today, but when it comes out, that we have all the training. And so I'm like so excited to play with Field Force. Oh, I said it right that time. Field Forces that, you know, I downloaded the beta, started playing with it, and I got to say, Field Forces is very it can be very confusing up front, but once you start to fundamentally understand some of the basic concepts of how the vectors work and starting to read how they display information, you can do some really powerful stuff. I was playing with cloth, making it deform and move in certain directions. I was playing with particles for really basic particle stuff. Like if you just need like a million particles flowing and being random and going like around an object, you can now do that pretty simply with standard Cinema 4D without having to reach for X particles or anything. So X particles way more, you know, way more in depth, obviously, with all their new fluids and all this stuff you could do for sure. But for basic, like getting like thousands of particles moving in the right direction and interacting with MoGraph, interacting with dynamics, it's pretty impressive what you could do now. So I've been working on some tutorials, some videos. All that gets us to what we announced at SIGGRAPH, which is Grayscale Gorilla Plus. And if you weren't at the announcement or you haven't seen it before, definitely go check out our page at Grayscale Gorilla Plus. .com, which we also own because I said it too many times, just like that.
Or
Grayscale Gorilla Plus.
The real URL is grayscalegorilla.com/plus. If you type grayscalegorillaplus.com, you will still get there.
I said it wrong too many times that
my God, that's amazing.
We smartly got the URL. So anyway, so what is this? So let me give you the basic rundown just for those of you who have been looking at our training. If you've looked at our Grayscale Gorilla guides over the last few years, we've been releasing some killer Grayscale Gorilla guides, which are in-depth training, not only on how these programs work, Cinema 4D, X Particles, and Redshift. We have a guide for each of those. And the whole idea behind the guide was, you know, tutorials and YouTube bring you pretty far and get you interested and help you understand how all this stuff. But when you want to dive really deep into something, YouTube's not a good place for that. First of all, they want you to watch guitar videos all the time. They do not want to feed you more Cinema 4D videos. At least if you're me, they just want to make you watch cool guitar players. So we wanted to build a place where you could dive in, focus on what you're trying to learn, and learn from the best people in the industry. So we built our Grayscale Gorilla guides, came out with our Grayscale Gorilla guide to Cinema 4D, Redshift, and X Particles. Well, the problem is if you wanted to grab all of those, kind of running into the same issue as buying a new version of Cinema 4D, it would cost a lot. Right? It would cost, by the time you got that, plus all of our training, it would cost over $1,300, $1,400, $1,500. And so a lot of people are like, well, I want to get into all this stuff, but for less per month or less per year. And that's why we created Grayscale Gorilla Plus. I mean, it's kind of a similar thought process on why membership works for what we're doing, because we're trying to give you guys the best training possible, period, by people that do this stuff for a living. And the other tricky part is, how do we keep this stuff updated for new versions? So the big one for us was like, okay, we have our awesome X Particles training, our Grayscale Gorillas Guide to X Particles, and it dives super deep into, I think it's what version is it updated to? 4 right now. I think that's correct.
3. I don't know. I gotta look.
The first one was, I believe, 3.5.
Yeah.
The original guide with John Bosley. And if you purchased that in the past, you also got the XP4 update for free.
That's right. Yeah. So what we wanted to build was one place where we didn't have to say, okay, here's the update, and the update's $50, but you have to buy the original one plus buy the update. Like, it's kind of it's similar thought process. We just wanted one place where we can not only deliver all of our amazing Grayscale Gorilla guides, but all of our archives, all like hundreds of hours of cinema focused and organized and curated Cinema 4D training for those of you who want to stay up to date with all this stuff. So right now it's, like I said, Redshift, X Particles, and obviously Cinema 4D. And the whole reason I'm bringing all this up is because I'm working with Andy, our buddy Andy over in the UK, and we're going to have some videos out with him soon about getting the Cinema 4D R21 training up and out basically as it launches. So as soon as you get R21, if you're planning on getting it, we'll have training to keep you up to date with all this new Field Forces stuff. And by the way, you'll also get all the R20 training. So if you haven't got into fields at all, you'll be able to get a refresher there and understand how fields work in general. And so anyway, the big news is that we announced it at SIGGRAPH, and we're going to do a special launch very soon. Actually, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you go over to grayscalegorilla.com/plus. I said it right that time, and put your name in, because we're going to do a small group to launch Grayscale Gorilla Plus. It's a completely new platform. Michael's been working his butt off to get this thing going. The new player is not Vimeo, which I'm super excited about. Chad is clapping. I am clapping. Vimeo, as you know, is kind of how Grayscale Gorilla got started with. They were the only ones doing HD. And over the last few years, I don't know what it is, but they have been inconsistent in their playback. It's been tough to go to make it full screen and to do a lot of things that I think a lot of our users wanted to do. So we have a completely new platform. It's super organized. It's super fast to use. And we call it Grayscale Gorilla Plus, and we want you to be a part of it. So we'll have more news about it, especially as we come out with our R21 training. And essentially all new updates will be inside of Plus. We're going to have very affordable pricing. And if you have a team, we even have team deals. So make sure you get on that list. Go to the URL, grayscalegorilla.com/plus. Put your name in, and any moment now we're going to be launching the first group into Plus. We have a lot of stuff planned that we're not even talking about, but once you see it, I think it'll be a perfect fit if you want to stay up to date with all this stuff. Definitely check that out. And so we announced that. We talked a little bit about what's coming there at the show. We also teased a new material pack that Chad's been working tirelessly on. It looks beautiful. Chad, do you have anything to add to that? Or are we going to keep that a little bit more of a secret as we get that moving forward?
I like secrets. They're fun. Actually, it's really not that much of a secret if you follow me on Instagram. You probably might have seen a lot of it, really. So it's like, whatever. Yeah, you might even know that. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I got pretty loose lips, so it's probably not. I shouldn't be in charge of secrets at all.
Let's cut his mic before it's too late.
I know.
Cut his mic.
I mean, yeah, I'm super stoked about this pack. I'll be talking more about it as we get closer to the release, but I think if you enjoy our materials now, you're gonna really love this new pack.
Yeah, I got the secret demo, and I was blown away. Just by the quality. Obviously, you're always killing it, Chad, but I think the creativity on this one and the ability for people to now here I am now trying to be careful.
Start beeping stuff.
Yeah, sorry, Michael. Hey, stay tuned. So we'll just jump through it because we always have stuff to talk about. And for those of you listening, you're like, where has the podcast been? We're excited to get back to a more consistent schedule. We honestly have been behind the scenes building some amazing stuff that we're finally launching, where we decided that, we have 10 years of helping customers in their workflow with materials, plugins, and training. And we decided this year to essentially double down on all three of those. And so we've been behind the scenes working really hard on all of that. We're really excited to get it out. So we'll spare you all of the launches and everything that's happening here at Grayscale Gorilla until it comes out. But we did announce at SIGGRAPH also a new Happy Toolbox pack that I'm also very excited about. Our buddies at Happy Toolbox, who, if you've seen their models, they make adorable and very well crafted, very beautiful, very artistically minded models. And they have a new pack coming out very soon. We're very excited to work with them again. And we have a new HDRI pack. We'll have more news about that as well.
It's so good.
It's so good. Yes, and many other things. So we'll get to those as we have it. We have our new EDU program, our volume program, all this stuff we've been working so hard on here at Grayscale Gorilla, and we'll get to all that. But other than that, let's kind of do I don't know, like a wrap up of SIGGRAPH, and maybe talk a little bit about going out to some of these studios and some of the things that we've seen and learned. Like what's the vibe that you got as far as studios working in the industry, and what did we all learn from going and seeing all these awesome studios?
They're busy. They're so busy. They're so busy. I mean, it's the same you kind of see in this industry wide. It's not just 3D and motion design. It's all the editors, shooters, everybody. It's just there's so much work to be doing right now. And like we mentioned before, in every different version of that. So you've got the YouTubers that are cranking stuff out nonstop. You've got guys doing titles, cranking stuff out, like literally wrapping a project and starting another project right away.
I think I learned that yeah, everything that you just said is totally right on the money. I think in addition to that, I saw a lot of studios sort of hitting the ceiling of what Cinema was able to do. So they're trying to like introduce Houdini into their workflow. This is like the first show that I've seen like a pretty big groundswell of Houdini interest. So I spent some time at the Houdini Hive and talking to those people and trying to learn more about that world as I start to dabble. So I think studios are basically like, listen, our ideas can't be limited by software. We need to be able to tackle any creative that the client needs. And we have to be ready for that. So it could mean that they're exploring with Houdini. It could mean they're exploring with Substance or whatever it is that's going to get them to where they need to be. I think a lot of studios aren't afraid to learn, which is great.
Yeah, that was really cool to see some of the bigger places we went into and just see their workflow, see their pipeline. I think that's something that I'm seeing as well, which is larger studios, even if they're busy, have a sense of pipeline and structure that smaller studios either never learned or don't have time to learn, or just because of the fact that they're small, they can't really integrate it. So I'm seeing either from a lot of calls I've been on recently or going into these studios that there's a real need for learning an entire 3D pipeline workflow from start to finish. And that always is easy when it's just one person in a room that can do it all, right? Maybe they buy models from TurboSquid and then they use them and they handle the rendering, they handle IT, they handle the output process, they handle all that. But as soon as you get 2 or 3 people in a room, it could be very difficult to know, who's in charge of what, but also just how to manage a pipeline, even just with file systems, like all the boring stuff, like all the boring stuff that none of us look up YouTube videos to go find because nobody types in YouTube like 3D pipeline training. But I'm seeing a real interest in learning that, and not a lot of people talking about that. And it's something that I've kind of come back to the office with a renewed like sense that I want to start to do more of that. Like I know, Chad, you've run some 3D teams and have seen it all.
Like 3 departments, I think I built.
Right. And you know how to stay organized, you know how to keep, how to build a pipeline that allows a small team to get a lot done. And I think that that's what I've seen more than anything is once you have a team that's dialed in their pipeline, dialed in how they work, they can get so much more done.
Right.
And that was kind of the vision of seeing these bigger companies, like they had extra copies of software laying around because when they get busy, they didn't want to slow down and like go figure out all the stuff to buy. They wanted like a full seat of 4 machines waiting so that when they scale, all they have to do is hire good people and go and say go. And that is a part of a workflow. That's part of a pipeline. And those are the things that I think aren't as fun to talk about sometimes, but it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of a lot of our audience out there. So I'll ask this too, if you're listening to this and you're working in a larger team like that and have questions about it, let us know. Like either head into the podcast comments or even better yet, go to like where's an even better place to put this? Like go bug
Our
us
Slack, maybe?
on our Slack, on our Instagram. Come let us know like what those issues are, because we want to try to solve those as well. We're realizing that staying up to date with software is one thing. Showing you guys like how to use all this stuff, try to make it look sexy and make it render fast. That's fun and to figure out. But and this kind of comes back to the pro render and physical render thing too. Getting a tighter and more efficient and more modern pipeline, we're seeing as one of the major things studios can do to like double, triple output. And that is really what your boss is yelling at you to do. Like
Right.
we're seeing way more bosses want more stuff to come out more than they are more beautiful stuff to come out. And so we, of course, as artists want it to be beautiful. We want to make sure we're doing cool work. But when the boss is yelling or when the client's yelling, we also want to help you guys with that. So that's kind of a internal, thinking of where my mind is after SIGGRAPH is just like trying to double down on that stuff, because I've seen, Chad, I've seen you do it. So I may have some questions for you.
It's
about
always
some of that stuff.
exciting. I'm excited when people when I see a studio or even just a really small studio, maybe even a freelancer that really takes their infrastructure seriously. I like that because what that means to me is that they take their entire job seriously and that they would rather spend the time working on the creative and not worrying about infrastructure because they already did that. They already like make that investment of time and money to build your pipeline so that you can handle anything that comes down the way. And I get excited when I see people take that stuff seriously because I know what that means to work at a place like that where you're not worrying about doing IT on your own machine. You're not worried about, well, what happens if we get that job? How are we going to be able to even handle it? We don't have enough machines, or, all those things that a good, I'd say like good planning can really take care of. I don't know. It gets me excited when I see a company that's got it figured out.
Well, I added that to the podcast list. Well, let's wrap this one. We'll hopefully be back in a week. Check your podcast. Tell your friends. Say, hey, podcast. They actually made one, and
We're back.
and
We're back.
And you know what? And we have plans to do more. It was actually something I heard a lot on the floor as well, which was, a lot of our customers and a lot of our audience are commuting, and they are want to learn and want to get better at what they're doing, and the podcast was a part of that. So we're also doubling down there. So anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap. Let us know your thoughts. Go to our blog and on our latest blog post about R21. Let us know your thoughts about the new pricing. And hey, it always helps if you put a review on iTunes for the podcast. Lets other people find it. And as always, we appreciate you listening. Thank you guys for being here. Stay tuned for another Grayscale Gorilla podcast very soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.